What's going on, everybody? Anthony Servino here with the Face Off Sports Network with my top starts and sits at the running back position for NFL Week 11. But first, let's get into the Week 10 recap. Aaron Jones, I told you to start him, ends as the RB19 in PPR with 12.1 PPR points. DeAndre Swift, told you to start him. Not a great day. 32, the RB 32 finishes with 7.5 PPR points. Tyrone Tracy, the best of the bunch, finishes as the RB 13 with 15.4 PPR points. Now to my sits. Told you to sit Tony Pollard. Finishes as the RB 23 with 10.3 PPR points, just as an RB 2. Travis Etienne, I told you to sit him, ends as the RB 42 with 5.3 PPR points. Then Javonte Williams ends as the RB 48 with 2.7. Overall, a pretty solid day, but we want to take that momentum. We want to build on it. And let's start with my Week 11 starts. And we're going to kick off with Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, where we waited for him to come back from injury. He comes back in week 7. He finds the end zone. And since then, it hasn't been great. Goes from 10.2 PPR points to 5.2, 4.5, and then hits the bye week. What's notable is that all of those three matchups were not favorable. They were top 9 in terms of bad matchups for enemy running backs. Really good defenses when it comes to stuffing the run. We hit the bye week. That means Chubb's another week healthier, another week back into NFL action, and he comes out of the bye week in one of the best matchups you can find at the New Orleans Saints. Now, before we get to the Saints, I will say Nick Chubb, he's averaging 14.7 touches per game. And after going for 12 touches in his first game back, he's had 16 in the next 2 games. We could be looking at a Nick Chubb getting a full workload this coming week. We could see vintage Nick Chubb in this matchup. He is averaging 80.5% of his yards after contact. That's 97th percentile using the tools on RotoWire.com with a 16.7% broken tackle rate, 67th percentile. So Nick Chubb, he's getting the action. He's getting the touches. He's even getting used in a red zone. 7 red zone touches, including 2 touches inside the 5-yard line. They both came in that game in which he scored against Cincinnati back in week 7. The Saints. What a dream matchup that is. We know Bijan Robinson lit them up last week, but the Saints have been getting lit up defensively, especially against the run, all season long. I love this spot for Nick Chubb. The Saints are allowing the 4th most PPR points to enemy running backs. In fact, in the last 5 weeks, the NFL average to PPR points to running backs is 22.6. The Saints are allowing 32. That's a plus 41.8 differential. That's really good news. And if we even scale back to week 6, we know Sean Tucker, he popped for 34. Bucky Irving popped for 18. The next week, Javonte for 26. The next week, Dobbins for 16. Next week, Chuba for 21. Last week, Bijan for 29. This is a strong matchup, and I'm suggesting we start Nick Chubb with confidence. We should be looking at his best performance of the year to date. Next up, David Montgomery. And David Montgomery has been good, not great. After an outstanding start, he's been under 12.6 PPR points in 3 out of his past 4 games. While he has scored a touchdown in 2 of those games, he's not getting the production we were getting. Remember, the first few games of the year, he popped for 20 a few times, and he was not under 15 points once. So a little bit of a downswing right now. A couple of bad matchups in the mix, but this is a nice bounce back spot. On the year, 15.6 touches per game. We know he's not going to get a ton more of that because of Gibbs, and there's a lot of mouths to feed overall on this offense. He is averaging 64.6% of his yards after contact. He has a 21.3% broken tackle rate. But what we love most about David Montgomery is his red zone usage. Since week 6, he has 5 rushes inside the 5-yard line. He also has over 12 red zone touches overall in that 5-game time period. He even gets targets sometimes. In fact, he gets targeted on 24.4% of the routes he is running with a 90% catch rate. So when he is going out for passes, he is very much effective. But we are starting David Montgomery a lot this week because of the matchup against Jacksonville. Jacksonville stymied the Minnesota Vikings last week. Their offense, I don't know how, but it happened. I don't think it happens against Detroit. I think the Detroit Football Lions use the Jacksonville Jaguars as human punching bags. I don't think it's going to be fair. I think there's a realistic world that the Detroit Lions, if they put their foot on the gas and keep it there, they can drop a 50 burger in this matchup. And yeah, this is one where David Montgomery and Gibbs, there's a world where they both get at least 15 each. I think there's a world where they both get 20 PPR points each. The Jacksonville Jaguars defense is that bad, despite Aaron Jones last week only going for 12.1. We've seen Barkley and Josh Jacobs both go for over 20 in weeks 8 and 9. We saw Swift in week 6 pop. We saw Etienne pop for 23 in week 1. I mean, no matter the matchup, it seems like running backs get going. And sometimes what holds down these running backs, the fact that their secondary is so bad in Jacksonville, that there's only so many points to be had. But this Lions offense this year, it's next level. I think they drop a lot of points. I think a lot of them come from David Montgomery. In fact, if you want a sneaky touchdown props, not really sneaky, we know David Montgomery probably scores. Take him to score 2. Our final starts Kareem Hunt. And what do we know this week? That the Chiefs activated Isaiah Pacheco. They designated him to return. We don't know how much life Kareem Hunt has left as the lead guy. Pacheco could come back at any time. There is a 21-day practice window. But again, how many more weeks do we have Kareem Hunt, who's been one of the bigger surprises, one of the more productive fantasy assets? Since coming back in week 4, he has not gone under 10 PPR points. And since week 5, he has not been under 13 PPR points. Back-to-back games now over 17, and he's gone over 17 in all but 2 games this year. Kareem Hunt has been absolutely money. And while he was held out of the end zone last week, he hauled in 7 of 10 targets for 65, ran 14 for 35. That's how he compiled his 17. But from weeks 5 to 9, he scored at least 1 touchdown in every single game. He's an older back. They got him off the streets, but he's still averaging 23.2 touches per game. In fact, 56.5% of the time he's on the field, he's getting a touch, which is 93rd percentile amongst the running back positions that qualify for that metric. You get the Buffalo Bills, and the Buffalo Bills defense, it is actually trending in the right direction, but their Achilles heel is containing the enemy running back. We've seen them stifle only one dude. Only one running back was held under 10 points. That was Tony Pollard back in week 7. Everybody else has managed to score well in the double digits. We've seen Etienne go off in this matchup a few times for over 29. Derrick Henry went over 30 in that same matchup. Justice Hill goes for 21. Jonathan Taylor last week in a meager game, 21 for 114 on the ground. There's production to be had for enemy running backs against Buffalo. They're allowing touchdowns both on the ground and to running backs that catch the football, which Kareem Hunt also does. We're starting Kareem Hunt with confidence. I think he finds the end zone again. I think he gives us a very, very solid stat line. I'm projecting right around 14 to 16 points this week for Kareem Hunt. Remember, if you like content like this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the alert icon so you can be notified anytime we are live to answer your questions, which is almost every day. Or when we drop videos just like this, if you have start-sit questions, if you have waiver wire questions, if you have trade questions, no matter what it is, ask it in the comment section below. Myself or one of my teammates will get back to you as soon as we can. Staying in this matchup, we are sitting Mr. James Cook. He's hard to sit. This Buffalo offense is trending in the right direction. I think it becomes that much more prolific once Amari Cooper finds his way back on the field. But James Cook started off looking like he was going to have a career year, but he's kind of quieted down since week 7. 2 out of 4 games under 11 PPR points. One of those games over 28 against Seattle. And then last week, solid 15.5 against Indy. He's been getting a lot of outstanding matchups, but his 2 worst matchups, Houston, he goes for 17. That's fine. But week 4 against Baltimore, scripted out at 5.8. This week against Kansas City, he gets the most toughest. Is that even a great phrase? Most toughest. He gets the toughest matchup on the schedule for him and anybody else. Kansas City, number 1 against the enemy running back. Kansas City has stifled a lot of dudes. And while James Cook does get touches, 14.8 per game, we do see Ty Johnson in the mix. We do see Josh Allen still take the ball and run. He's been more active scoring touchdowns as a runner the past few weeks. And we also see Ray Davis. He's an ascending player as well. This is a loaded offense with a lot of mouths to feed. I think this game they're going to lean on the superstar Josh Allen because I don't know how much rushing action is going to happen from James Cook. In fact, James Cook is going to have to rely probably on catching the ball out of the backfield and or trying to find the end zone. It is really hard for me to say, oh yeah, start this touchdown-dependent guy since touchdowns are really hard to predict. And Kansas City this year, they've only allowed 3 total touchdowns to running backs. And outside of Rachaad White in week 9 scoring, they have not allowed a running back touchdown since week 3. And they have not allowed a running back to score a receiving touchdown this year. This defense is outstanding. Out of all the games Kansas City played, 5 running backs were held. 5 starting running backs, 5 fantasy-friendly running backs were held in the single digits. Zach Moss and Cincy, Dobbins and the Chargers, Mason and the 49ers, Madison and the Raiders, Estime, Javonte and company last week. And the highest ceiling we've seen from a running back against this defense this year, Bijan Robinson in week 3 with 13.2 fantasy football points. This Kansas City defense is shutting everybody down. I think they shut down James Cook. Let's go to our next sit. We're going to stay on the Travis Etienne sit train. Told you to sit him last week. We're going to continue to sit him. This guy, he has bad matchups ahead. He has a bad team around him. Trevor Lawrence is out again. There's nothing good I can say here. Back-to-back games since returning from injury, under 5.3 PPR points. He did get 12 touches, which it seems like, his most since week 4, but he didn't do anything with them against a stout run defense from the Vikings. Now they get Detroit, number 6 against the run. I don't know where he's going to get yards from. He's not getting enough receiving volume to give us a high PPR floor, even though Mac Jones is in the game, but it would make sense. He would check down to his pass-catching running back. They're not getting close enough to the end zone for Etienne to score. There's no point. I don't see a world where Travis Etienne, I don't see a world where he cracks 9 this week. I get Detroit's defense. They've been a little bit more leaky than usual the past few games, but they allowed Mixon, Josh Jacobs, Pollard, Aaron Jones. This is the cream of the crop. Being held to under 20, under 17 PPR points. You look at some of the good backs they shut down earlier this year. Tampa backs, James Conner in weeks 2 and 3, being held to under 3.5 fantasy points. This defense is really good against the run, and it's not like they have, an exceptional passing attack, and maybe that opens up the running lanes. That's not happening. We're sitting Travis Etienne. Don't even think about starting him. And the final sit of the week, another guy I told you to sit last week, and I think we're going to sit him again. That's Tony Pollard, who's been one of the more reliable fantasy backs this year. He's just now hitting a string of bad matchups. Last week against the Chargers held at 10.3. Now he gets the Minnesota Vikings. But Pollard is still involved. Playing through injury, he did manage 13 touches last week, and he does go over 60 yards total and does give us 4 receptions, which did raise his floor. But another game without a touchdown. In fact, he is on a 4-game scoring drought. He is getting 19.9 touches per game, but maybe Spears being back and we're getting a little bit older in the season, maybe a few more touches goes in Spears' direction. He is averaging 67.6% yards after contact, which is fine. Tony Pollard's been exceptional, but this is an overall bad offense. Not much of a semblance of a passing attack, despite the fact that Calvin Ridley is getting going a little bit, and that could help Tony Pollard in a lot of spots. But again, this Minnesota defense is one of the best in the NFL, and I get their Achilles heel is defending the pass. But, when you're going against Mason Rudolph and when you're going against, Levis, and then last week when you're going against Mac Jones, you're not going to give anything up on the pass. You're not going to give anything up on the ground, and your defense is going to play really good football, and that's what I'm expecting this week. I'm expecting Minnesota, their defense, to ball out and really stymie the Tennessee Titans. Minnesota's run defense is so good. They've held 5 different running backs to single-digit PPR points this season. Singletary, Akers when Mixon was out, Breece Hall, and in the past 2 games, JT and Travis Etienne. In back-to-back games, they've held the starting running back to under 8.9 PPR points. The Minnesota Vikings, they've only allowed 3 rushing touchdowns to running backs, 2 receiving touchdowns to running backs. There's not a lot of production to be had. We are sitting Tony Pollard with confidence in week 11.